When I was 25, I went on a solo trip to Rio de Janeiro. My favorite DJ would be there that weekend, and I always wanted to go anyway. I've traveled solo many times in my life and never had any issues. Airbnbs aren't expensive. A little outside of the city, and the one I was staying at was very nice and comfortable. It was its own little one-floor house, but the whole inside was very modern and clean. The Friday that I landed, I unpacked at the Airbnb, grabbed dinner, and went to the rooftop venue where the DJ would be performing the first day and night. All went well, and I met some really cool people at the rooftop. James, Ethan, and Jess. Ethan and Jess were dating. James, the first guest, was third-wheeling on the trip. The next day, I met up with them as they were also on a trip here. We got brunch together. Then we checked out some of the sites together, like the Christ Redeemer and Sugarloaf Mountain, and then we hit the beaches. Unfortunately, they had tickets that they had already bought to another show that night, which I couldn't go to. So I was back to my solo ventures, which was fine. I still found things to do. Eventually, when I was hungry, I walked back in the direction of the Airbnb towards the outside of the city. On the way back, I stopped at a restaurant. I found I can speak a little Portuguese, but I'm by no means fluent, so I tried to keep to places where people seemed to speak English. While I was alone, the menu on the window had some English writing, so I went inside. This restaurant was kind of small and dark. A lot of the restaurants in the area were expensive, but this one seemed affordable, so I stayed. The dining space was very long and narrow. It wasn't really busy. There were a few people sat further down at a couple tables. Then there was a man seated at a table basically next to mine. He was about 50. I wondered if he was another tourist. He and I were the only two people seated alone in here. The server came over and initially spoke in Portuguese, and I asked in Portuguese if he speaks English, and he said yes. From there on, I ordered in English. I noticed the man at the other table looking over, watching as I ordered. It was kind of weird. When the server walked away after taking my order, the man said in English with a Portuguese accent that my Portuguese sounded good. I said thank you, and he started talking to me in Portuguese as if giving me a lesson. I think he thought he was coming off as charming, but it was annoying and creepy. I kept looking down at my phone to act distracted, but he'd keep talking to me both in English and in Portuguese. I'd humor him to be nice and not create awkwardness. And I tried my best to converse with him in Portuguese as he'd correct my mistakes while trying to speak. The conversation was basically where I'm from, why I'm here, what I did today, and where I'm staying. I kind of just made up that I'm staying with a friend. What really creeped me out was when he told me how sexy I am when I talk in Portuguese. I was hoping he was leaving soon, but a part of me died inside when I saw the waiter bring him his food. Luckily, my food didn't take long. I got some pork stew dish. The man asked how it was. I told him fine. He stopped talking as much now that he was eating. Thank God I ate quickly. When I was done, I hurriedly asked for the check just because I didn't want to converse with this man anymore. The man also asked for the check right after I did, which I found so annoying and strange. He wasn't even done eating. Once I paid, I got up and walked out. The man said something in Portuguese, but all I said was bye and kept walking. It was dark out now, and the streets were a little less lively. I was walking for a while. When I came to an intersection, while waiting to cross, I noticed the man from the restaurant across the street. He was definitely looking at me, but looked away the opposite direction. When I noticed him, maybe he had to walk the same way. It wasn't that unlikely. I continued to walk back, and as I was getting closer, I kept turning back just to see if he was still in sight. He wasn't. I arrived to the Airbnb. I got to the front door and looked around one more time, and I noticed way down the block that man standing on the corner by the intersection. He was staring in this direction. I felt my heart drop. He was following me. I let myself inside the house and locked the door. Then I closed all the blinds. Now he knew where I was staying. I panicked and called my dad and told him. He told me to just be alert and make sure everything is locked and maybe keep a knife by me. It was a Saturday night and my flight wasn't until late the next day, so I did want to go out. Eventually, I called an Uber to a bar in the downtown area, and I went to a venue having a house music night. I was there for maybe a couple hours before calling an Uber back to the Airbnb. When I got back, I let myself into the house kind of drunk. I sat down on the couch just to relax for a bit, but I noticed something. I heard the sound of the outside, and then I saw the blinds to one of the windows blowing from the breeze. The window in the kitchen was open. I had all the windows shut because the air conditioning was running. I immediately knew to get up and leave the house quickly. I called the emergency number and did my best to articulate to the operator in Portuguese that there was a home break-in. The police showed up in a matter of minutes, and I came out from behind the bush I was hiding at across the street. When they did, one of the police officers did speak a little bit of English, so I was able to tell him that the window was opened and I was being followed. Earlier, the police entered the house and yelled things I didn't understand. The moment I saw them walking outside with a man from the restaurant and handcuffs was the most shocking moment of my life. The mix of emotions I felt, disbelief, yet relief, but also horrified. If I hadn't called the cops, if I had gone into the bedroom where he was probably hiding, I didn't even want to think about it. He was taken away, and I never had to see his ugly, creepy face again. I'm glad he was stupid enough to not close the window behind him. I should have listened to my dad and locked all the windows as well. I just never imagined he would actually climb through one, though. I left the next day and haven't returned to Brazil since.